Toxic people can infiltrate every area of your life, from family, friends, maybe in the workplace, or quite frankly, in your social media network. If you feel like you are constantly being exhausted from certain people, maybe you're even feeling anxious or depressed after a visit, chances are you're dealing with toxic people. In this video, I am going to give you some telltale signs of toxic behavior, and I'm also going to give you the tools and techniques you need to empower yourself and take control of your well-being. It's important to not only identify toxic people in your life, but also have a game plan on how you are going to appropriately set boundaries and, in some cases, get rid of them altogether. Let's look at some of these common tactics that these toxic people are using as emotional intimidation. The first one being gaslighting. Now, the definition of gaslighting is when someone is making you doubt your own perceptions or your own memory, or quite frankly, sometimes your own sanity. Another way is undermining. This is another emotional intimidation tactic that these toxic people use by sabotaging your work or your confidence in your work. And often these things are done with subtlety. So it's kind of hard to pinpoint them or to even know if it's real. Sometimes you question yourself there. Isolation is another form of emotional intimidation that these toxic people use in your life. They deliberately exclude you because they know how it's going to make you feel. They keep you out of meetings. They don't include you in projects, or they don't include you in social gatherings. I actually had this happen to me in college. I'll have to tell you that story sometime. Another way that these toxic people are using this for emotional intimidation is micromanagement. And this is excessive control over your work. Maybe they are nitpicking over things and they are, trying to be involved in every single aspect where they actually don't need to be. And they're leading to a sense of making you feel powerless, like you don't have control over your own thing. They're micromanaging you to such degree. Another thing is public humiliation, and this is criticizing you or embarrassing you in front of people around you or in public. Lastly, the form of emotional intimidation that these toxic people sometimes use is the inconsistency in expectations. Like one minute they expect up here, the next minute, no, it's fine. Then the next minute, oh no, it should have been this or it should have been that. Changing the goalpost, making it difficult. You're having to work excessively hard to meet certain criteria that changes over and over again. So this creates confusion and subsequently insecurity in whatever it is you're trying to do. So if you start to see these types of things happening, or if you feel like these are things that are happening in your social circle, at work, or in your business working with clients, then I think there is a high likelihood that you are dealing with toxic people. So now that we know some of these common emotional intimidation tactics that are being used, let's look at the various types of toxic people that are using these tactics in the first place. Stick around because I've got about 5 or 6, and I think that you need to know all of them. So please stick around to the end, and I'm sure you'll find value. So just consider clicking that subscription button, subscribing to my channel, hitting that notification bell so that you don't miss an episode, and giving this video a like, because we all deal with toxic people, and this video is going to help you identify who they are and decide whether or not you need to give them the boot. All right, let's look at the first toxic characteristic. And this person is a complainer, and they often feel unheard in the workplace. Sometimes you get to work or you're on your job and you have someone who constantly has something to complain about. No matter how beautiful the sky is outside or how pretty the flowers are blooming, they have a complaint. And these people, they can be draining on you. So to combat them, use a little bit of sympathy at first, okay? Like when they first come to you, sympathize, and ask questions. I'm sorry to hear that. Can you tell me more about why that is bothering you, or something along those lines? But when it gets to be a little bit too much to bear, then it's time for you to be quite direct. And this is when you're going to say, listen, we all have some things that we could look at differently. But I try to look at things from a positive perspective, and I suggest you do the same thing. So maybe instead of thinking about the negative and what's happening, maybe you can start looking at what is actually going well. And maybe you can even list a few things for them that are going quite nicely in their life that they can focus their attention on. But yeah, even with the complainer, there becomes a time when you're like, okay, girl, all right, you're alive, you're 6 feet above. Let's just stop complaining and just look at the glass as half full today. Okay. People have their own stuff. Another toxic characteristic is the gossiper. We all know who this person is. In the church, they come to you and say, well, we think you should pray for, we should probably pray for brother and sister so-and-so. They're going through X, Y, and Z. Gossip, okay? These people often feel inferior, right? Especially in the workplace, and they're seeking a little bit of attention, maybe a little bit of validation. So, they'll come to you with a few little gossip tidbits, hoping that you will kind of, bring yourself down to that level, and they'll feel a little bit more comfortable because you're saying things too, whatever the case may be. I don't know why people gossip, but they do. So if you run into someone like this, it may be a good idea to question the validity of what it is they're saying, especially if you know it's not true. You could say something like, I've never known that to be the case for that person. I'm wondering maybe if that's, a bad day she's having or something along those lines, and maybe counteract what they're saying with the fact that you actually know. Or you could sort of disengage from the gossip in the first place and just say, you know what, I just don't choose to participate in things that aren't factual. It's probably a good idea if you ask her if that's true versus, spreading lies. No, don't say that. But that's what you want to say, right? All right. The next type of toxic person that you may run into is the credit stealer. This is one that I am quite familiar with as well. And this person often feels a little bit insecure in the workplace. They maybe even have a strategy, and they're doing this so that they can climb a little bit further and maybe step on a few little shoulders to get ahead. So they're going to steal ideas and take credit for other people's ideas. But the first thing that I want you to think about here is the importance of you valuing your own work. It's really important that you recognize what you're saying is important, is valuable, so that you know that it's not right for someone to take something that you worked hard on, and you don't concede because maybe you think, well, maybe the way his approach would be a little bit better than mine, or her approach maybe is slightly different, and maybe they didn't hear me when I said it, but I'm glad it was out. Those aren't the attitudes that you want to take. You have to value your work, value what you're bringing to the table. And that's a lot of introspective work. We're going to get to some things that you can do about that in just a second. But beyond valuing your work, when you're dealing with someone who is a credit stealer, it's important for you to communicate very clearly, but softly reclaim your position. And you can do something along the lines of, wow, I'm really happy that you agreed with my earlier comment and that it resonated with you. I'm really glad that you found it to be interesting. You could say something like that. And that kind of takes control of your narrative back, and it lets the person know who was trying to steal the credit that you're not having it, okay? That you recognized your value and the words came out of your mouth first. But you were very clear and concise, but you did it in a soft way. So that's one thing that you can do. Another thing that I think here that will work well for those credit stealers is to document what you are doing and put dates on things so that people know that you had the idea way back here. And, maybe you even had a meeting with the person that tried to steal the credit and gave them the information. So therefore they knew that the information was yours. But if you have that documentation, that paper trail, then it's easier for you to sort of do the clear and concise communication in a soft way. But then you have your backup, you have your receipts to prove what you're saying is true. The other thing that you can do to mitigate some of these credit stealers is just to enhance your visibility with the bosses and get some in front, some face time with your superiors, letting them know your ideas directly. So when you get into a meeting, they know already that the idea was yours. So when someone tries to take credit for it, they'll have the real deal, Holyfield, and know exactly where the idea came from because you've done your due diligence by A, documenting, then B, going to your superiors, giving them the information in a face-to-face, so that now once you get into the meeting, those credit stealers have a harder time stealing your thunder, because the important parties have already been informed of your idea or the thought behind what it is you're saying. Now, what saved me from some of these toxic environments and toxic people is the work that I did to understand myself and my boundaries. So honestly, you can fake the funk for a little while, but ultimately you are going to need a solid foundation to successfully safeguard your mental health when it comes to these toxic people and safeguard your happiness. So I've talked about my process for doing this several times, many times here on the channel. And quite frankly, I've helped a lot of entrepreneurs, I've helped a lot of community leaders, and I've helped a lot of corporate leaders as well to discover the confidence that they need to set these appropriate boundaries, to manage the expectations of people around them, and to teach people how to treat them. And in teaching people how to treat them, also subsequently holding them accountable for this new knowledge of how to treat you. And you can do it as well. I can teach you these things as well. You don't have to tolerate toxic people in your life. You can set the bar. You can set the bar for your relationships, not only those personal ones, but the professional ones as well. So I'm going to leave the information for my program, Project CEO, down in the description. So head down to the description after you watch this video and add your name to the waitlist so that you'll get all the information when I begin to roll that campaign out. All right, so now is the time to go ahead and get back to some of these toxic characteristics and traits and these people that you could be in the midst of. I want to help you, right? Safeguard yourself. So for your own mental health and your own happiness. So I want you to be able to recognize and manage these situations when they occur. Now, the next type of person that is toxic that you could be around is the microaggressor. Now, being someone of African descent, I'm African American, these microaggressions are real. You know, you've heard, oh, wow, I have a lot of Black friends. Microaggression. You know, these things, this type of behavior feeds into stereotypes and stigmatizations of genders, races, sexual orientation, religion, or just any other marginalizing group or marginalized group. The idea here is to really begin to hold people accountable and educate them. This is something that I try to do. When I'm around people that don't look like me, I do, instead of get angry, I do try to educate people on the appropriate terminology. Or, you know, I've mentioned in other videos on my podcast, I'm doing an entire season on really empowering, encouraging, and educating my minority brothers and sisters to really build their excellence and start walking in excellence, because there are not a lot of opportunities where people are going to, you know, sympathize with our needs or our things simply because we have a different look. It's quite the opposite a lot of times, unfortunately. So I'm encouraging people on my podcast to really step up and, you know, perform with excellence and operate within their community with excellence, because of these types of things, these microaggressions and people who are marginal or who are, stereotyping and stigmatizing various groups, these marginalized groups. So it's important for us to hold people accountable and educate them and be in environments where it's safe to do those types of things. Also, I'm sure you recognize, I'm very good at using direct communication. You know, I'm not quite intimidated by a lot of things, and so I don't have a problem saying what's on my mind. Most of the time I try to do it with love and professionally, but you know, sometimes the occasion makes it a little bit more difficult for me to do that, but I still try. But yeah, a lot of people may be intimidated and they do find it difficult to use direct communication. In these instances, I think that it's maybe best that you remove yourself from the situation if you feel that it is a toxic environment or you are around toxic people. If you can't speak up, if you feel uncomfortable addressing it directly. Also, you can escalate these situations to superior if you're in the workplace, if you're dealing with these microaggressors. It's not something that you should have to deal with in the workplace. So escalate it to your superior. Now, I want to say that this next and final person might be the worst to me of the toxic people. And that's because these people are bystanders and they see the microaggression. They see the credit stealer. They see the gossiper. They see and tolerate the complainer, all in an effort to, go along to get along so that they aren't affected, so that nothing negative happens to them, so that they can, excel. They don't get the dirt on them. The bystander might be the worst because they're watching it being done to other people. They're not standing up for others. They're not offering any assistance or anything. They're not even telling the person doing it that it's wrong. They're just going along with it. They're just letting it happen, knowing it's wrong, knowing it shouldn't be done. This is really toxic behavior when you see negativity and you don't stand up for people. And it's all for selfish gain. That's just the worst, I think. Tell me what you think in the comment below. Which of these toxic characteristics have you had to deal with, and which one do you think is the worst? Leave a comment below. Let's talk about it in the comments. But when it comes to a bystander, sometimes they aren't even self-aware enough to know that they're being quite selfish or that they are not being a good team player. And so they won't even know that they're doing it to even acknowledge that it needs to be changed. And so it could be a blind spot for them. They may not even be equipped to handle it. Even if they knew that's what they were doing, they may not even have the tools because they haven't taken my program, Project CEO. I don't know. How do you protect yourself, though? Like, we've talked about all these things, but how do you begin to protect yourself from toxic people? And I mentioned this before at the beginning, and it is to really become self-aware and understand what you need to operate at your best. You then understand your own value and you know where those lines are that people shouldn't cross, or that you are where those areas are that you are protecting. Also, I think that it is important for you to have a communication style where you are effective in your communication, where you are you communicate concisely and clearly with people so that you can really express what it is that you need, and it will resonate with the person that you're talking to. Also, you want to maybe have enough confidence in yourself, your ability, your value, what you're bringing to the table, to disengage when it's necessary. It's not always going to feel good, but knowing that you are preserving your own sanity and that you are preserving your own happiness and that you are really preserving and protecting the value that you're bringing to the table may require that you step away, that you disengage from certain people. So now I think it is safe to say that it's probably going to be difficult for you to eliminate all the toxic people from your life, but we can certainly make it difficult for their negative behavior and their emotional intimidation to hinder our progress. So in this next video, I'm taking it a step further, and we're going to extend it and talk a little bit about conflict solutions, conflict resolutions, because when it comes to conversations, and if you're in business, your conversions, having the 3 steps that I talk about in this video that I'm sharing are going to go a long way in navigating the toxicity even more. All right, so if you enjoyed this video, if you learned one thing, if one thing entertained you, shoot, if you like my t-shirt, Be You, Unique, Unstoppable, unafraid. That is my t-shirt. You can get it in my shop. I will link that down below. But if you liked anything in this video, please make sure that you give it a big thumbs up. Make sure that if you are still here, that you have subscribed. Let me wait. Okay. Thank you for subscribing. I so appreciate you. And make sure that you come back again next week. Hit that notification bell because I upload every single Thursday. And I don't know if you know this, but my podcast video also uploads on Tuesdays every week. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget, head down and get on the wait list for Project CEO, and I'll see you back here next week. Bye, guys.